disruptive behavior. Please see the agenda for more information about these requirements. If you parked in the Sheridan Walker parking garage north of John Rex Elementary School or in the Or Art District's parking garage south of City Hall, staff can provide a parking validation ticket to you. The agenda and documents are located at https://okc.primegov.com/public/portal. You will then select the Downtown Design Review Committee meeting, then click on an agenda item, and the relevant documents will come up below the item. Keith, will you please make the roll call?
Jones.
Here.
Brandon. Blatt. Here. Copeland.
Here.
Sarur.
Here.
Schmid. Here. Trujillo.
We have quorum.
Since we have quorum, the first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes. Motions?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Copeland second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Wow, this is, so it's not even, the minutes
It's showing up
aren't
on
even
the screen, but not showing up there.
well, the minutes are, it says it's waiting for an active item, so it's not even registering on our screen that you're voting on the minutes. So, so that we can just continue moving on.
Just want to go ahead and do a voice vote for the record.
Yes, so we had a motion by Blatt, a second by Copeland, and can you just call the roll in?
Roll.
Jones.
Yes.
Blatt.
Yes.
Copeland.
Yes.
Sarur.
Yes.
Schmid.
Yes.
Trujillo.
Yes.
Motion passes. Next on the agenda is cases to be withdrawn. We have none. We do, on the next agenda item, continuous request. We have a continuous request for DTCA-22-0070.
So this request is to continue it for the final time to the May 18th meeting. So on that date, this will either be withdrawn or you will be voting either for it or against it. This is on the demolition of the smokestack.
I'll make a motion to continue to the May 18th meeting date.
Mariana Salud, the second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Oh, it's working.
Motion passes. The next item on the agenda is the consent docket. On the consent docket, we have DTCH-21-0040 R2 at 41 West Park Place.
If you want to pull this for discussion, this is another temporary art display in Campbell Art Park. We typically get one or two of these every year or so.
Okay. So we don't need a motion. Is there any objection to consider it? Oh, sorry.
Right, so there'd be a motion just to approve the consent docket.
Got it.
If-
Need a motion to approve the consent docket?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent docket.
Rosa Trujillo, second.
We have a motion and a second, so please vote.
Okay.
Motion passes. Moving to individual cases for consideration, we have none. Under old business, we have none. Under communications, there is a series of items. If there are any comments from staff,
The very first one, right? Is that the presentation?
Yes.
Correct? Okay,
Yep.
so sorry. Let me get in there. You haven't had one of these in a while, and I'm sorry. Laura Griggs, Planning Department. Dang it, I keep forgetting that. You haven't had one of these in a while, and let me get to view. Oh, I can look here. I always forget that. And full screen mode. Okay. But we had a request from TAP Architecture. Just click it and it'll change screens, for a proposed new project that they want to discuss with you and allow you to give them some feedback on the project before they actually submit it.
Thank you. Thank you, Laura. Good morning. It's my pleasure to be here this morning and present to you. My colleague, Chris Teehee, will also present and talk more about the technical aspects of this.
And if you would identify yourself, we all know who you are, but
Anthony McDermott, TAP Architecture. Sorry about that. That's presumptuous of me. Because I'm an alumnus of this illustrious committee, I always enjoy a courtesy presentation of a project before it becomes fully formed. And some history in that, I was sitting where you are sitting right now, and some architects rolled in a model of a project that was proposed for downtown. And it was about this high, and it had a blanket over it, and the architects pulled the blanket away, and there it was, fully formed. And it's like, what do you all think? And then they turned the lights on, and it was internally lit. And at that point, there was no opportunity for comment. So I'm respectful of that, and that is my memory of seeing projects come before me fully formed. This is a new building for the IAFF, which is the firefighters union locally that represents all the firefighters in Oklahoma City. They're currently located on the north side of 6th Street, on the east side of Robinson. They were fortunate enough to be able to acquire a surface parking lot to the west of their property. So on basically the northeast corner of Robinson and 6th Street has been a surface parking lot for a long time, actually ever since the bombing. It's currently used by the DEQ. It's just a leased facility. But the firefighters were able to, they needed to expand at their current location. They own traditionally what were two buildings now joined into one building. It was built, and those buildings were both built at the same time in the early 50s, and they were office buildings then, and they are office buildings today. They need a new union building, which is basically an assembly use, an assembly hall where they conduct meetings and hold various events, if you will. So we have, in concept, designed a building on that corner. It is primarily an assembly space. It has an outdoor space that's attached to it. It is a 2-story high volume, even though it is a 1-story building. So if the room we're sitting in would be a good example. It has a very high ceiling. So it presents from the street as a 2-story building, even though it is just at grade. And I think I'll scroll through this and let Chris speak to the ideas that we've come up with. Right now, it is very conceptual in nature, not detailed at all, but the concept is accepted by membership, their membership, and we can visit about in a little more detail.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Chris Teehee. I will be the senior project manager on this project. So again, as Anthony said, we've approached the union members. We have had several meetings with them. We've gone through the exercise of kind of giving them a program, if you will, and developed the floor plan and started the concept ideas that we've brought to them. Again, we've had several meetings, had to go through several members, but we've come up with our idea here, and so we've proposed and listened to their ideas. They've really wanted something that stands true to them being a fireman, so they kind of wanted something to represent a firehouse, if you will. So we've introduced a large expanse of glass, which we know there's a requirement on street frontage or public ways, that the glazing amount on that facade. So we're trying to represent kind of pulling into a fire station, so they've really come to really like this idea. This is from the south side looking north, obviously. You see the corner lot with the 2 large windows, the new entry into the Union Hall, and then we're going to propose to resurface or basically re-veneer the existing building, because they would like that to look as it would be all one new building once we get done with the new and renovation piece.
Can you indicate clearly what's existing and what's proposed? If
So-
you're not that familiar.
The difference in height here is this is all new structure and this is the existing facility now. So this is the view just directly looking at the existing. This is all existing penetrations. The only thing we are doing on this is representing larger openings here and here. They have a really big influx of selling merchandise. This is one of their biggest things that they make money on, is selling t-shirts, hats, sweatshirts, and it's mainly to the firemen themselves. So again, we're gonna be asking for some off-street parking here, and that will allow them to come up 15 minutes, hop out. We're gonna promote this space so they have frontage, a doorway. They can promote their merchandise through the storefront now, and this will kind of really open that operation up for them. I have quite a few slides here, so I'll kind of be quick on this now. This is kind of the intersection that we really are promoting. You'll see a little images a little bit later that really speak to kind of what made them heroes in the city was obviously the bombing. So we really wanted to capture that view of outside this glass looking down the street, which you'll see in a little bit. And this is an opportunity that we kind of carved out a piece here to represent, give them type of a monument, plaque, statue of something to really represent them. And as people go by, they will know that this is the fire union building or associated with the firemen themselves. So this is the west side of the building looking east. Again, we're trying to really represent kind of the firehouse look, large doors those look like 4 bays of doors where you could pull some vehicle equipment in. Obviously, these will not be operational. They really wanted a street presence on this side. So this window, that back wall, that is a corridor from the Union Hall out to the outdoor patio area. And that's going to be kind of their memorabilia wall, if you will. So at night or as people go by, if there's not an event, if they walk by this window, they're going to know that this is full of firemen and fire memorabilia, and just to show the dedication, basically a dedication wall, if you will. Now you can see this is again, this is all new. This would be the outdoor patio area. Again, we're looking at a different couple of details here. We're going to use an accent brick. We're going to treat this as a garden wall, have a lot of openings in that wall. If you can, we really haven't represented it here yet, but to allow visual through the wall, airflow, so it's just not such a stagnant, large masonry wall, because this will be, obviously for security, at least an 8-foot wall. This is the north side looking south. So this would be kind of the main entrance now into the facility, which is in the existing building. We are dealing with some grade issues here. So again, we really haven't worked all that out, but we're proposing that this now gets to be a drive lane so people can either drop off for an event that's in the outdoor area or drop off here to the main entrance into the new Union Hall. And again, we're going to propose kind of using 2 types of different bricks here. Views in the patio area, again, these walls would have some openings, some penetration, some brick detailing to, again, allow some ventilation to come through there, some visual, so it just doesn't feel so confined. So now we're getting inside the building. This is the corridor that leads from the exterior patio area into the Union Hall. So you would be consistently passing by any event with this memorabilia or dedication wall. And so within the space, again, this is just a render, so it's kind of hard to see the visuals, but you can kind of get the image that you would be looking down Robinson, and this is kind of framing in to where, like we've just known, I mean, that bombing kind of changed our city, and it definitely made the firemen the heroes they are today in this city, and they're very proud of that. And so that was our our idea is to frame that vision that they've always had and for the people that will be in this space. And so as you can see, we went out there and actually took some images, kind of superimposed them within our model. So you can kind of see that this will be the framework for that visual effect when you're in that Union Hall. So again, we're familiar with the DDRC guidelines. As you can see here, it is kind of small, sorry about that, but you can see the different labels within this city block. That is a 1-story building in green, 2-story building in blue, 4-story in orange, 5 in yellow, and red a 10. So what we are looking at is within this city block that we are basically proposing this building, we don't meet the DDRC requirements of the 4 stories, 50 foot tall, but neither do any of the buildings around us. So what we're looking at is to blend in with that city block, if you will, not be out of scale, but be in tune with the adjacent buildings. So that's where we're at. So we've proposed and have gotten this far. So that's kind of the next step, is to see what you guys think, have any comments or concerns with this. And we just wanted to address this before we got too far along.
And just to clarify, it's 3 stories or 50
3
feet.
stories, sorry, 3 stories.
Just so nobody was confused by. And the other thing just to mention is they can set the building back further than 10 feet. You might recall up to 40% for entrances and things, which is clearly what they're doing here, if that is in fact is set back more than 10 feet there on the corner to allow for the art piece that they're talking about. So they would be well within the setback requirements. It's just the height that they won't meet, that they will need a variance from.
So it will require a variance.
Yes.
Guideline, it's not a guideline, it's
Well, the height is a regulation.
a regulation.
Right, so he was referencing the glass, that is a guideline, so, but they clearly meet the 50% glass on the first floor. I had commented to them that I like the fact that they're using the windows that look like garage doors, because we've had some projects that have come in and actually had garage doors that look just like this, but they operated as doors.
And that is one of the ideas that we have proposed. Obviously, we're starting to throw a lot of ideas out to them. This door here, we even mentioned, that is large enough to pull a piece of equipment in there, one of the fire rescue ambulances or something. So if they do get a new piece of equipment, that union space is large enough to where that piece of equipment could come in there, be parked, and still have about 75 to 100 people in that facility. So they really like that idea as well. Something else that kind of drove us to this was through our meetings with them and talking to them, they were all big about having a rooftop patio. They wanted a rooftop patio to hang out at. Well, those are expensive, and by the time we got up there working with the contractor, just looking at numbers, they just don't have the budget for that. And so that's why we proposed this idea, give them something ground level, a little more useful. It eliminates extra stairways, elevators. So we just proposed something, again, outside of the box from what they were thinking. Well, they really like this idea. It's going to save them money. They're going to get to do a little bit more. They're going to allow to keep their existing buildings, so they're going to have to be able to keep all of that square feet, expand their merchandise, what's their breadwinner, that's how they make a lot of their money, is selling those items. So we're giving them that opportunity, because right now it is just strung out all over that facility. So they've really come to like our ideas. And so like I said, we're at the point now that we need to start engaging the committee here and seeing what we can and cannot do.
So if you drive by, you'll also notice, because of the parking lot, there's a huge curb cut. And this will give the opportunity for them to redo the sidewalk through there, so it's clearly more pedestrian-friendly than what it is currently. If you've ever walked, I think some of you might walk in that area or go to businesses in that area and are familiar with it. So that is something I'm definitely excited about being able to do. We can't make them close a curb cut. We can ask. And they're planning on doing it, which is really fantastic.
I think the big challenge is going to be precedent. I mean, we're talking about holding other individuals to a certain standard, and I know that there's been conversations with architects, developers, owners that come in. I'm extremely thankful that you're bringing this and getting the answers up front so that your process isn't fully developed and then becomes a hard discussion at that point. But that's the big struggle that I would have, is that we're saying a one-story building is acceptable in this case because of the fact that we like the concept of the project. I like the concept of the project. I love the idea of redoing the streetscape, and I realize it's not represented in these renderings, and I would expect that it would be very pedestrian friendly and enjoyable. But the thought of doing a one-story building in this particular spot, even with it having a two-story appearing volume, would be a challenge from a precedent standpoint of saying that this is okay here, but we would absolutely be rejecting it if somebody brought an image that didn't look as you've presented. Something that from my standpoint, that would be the challenge for us. And I don't know where we would stand from, to throw all the cards on the table, what would staff recommend? If this was brought today and it was a one-story building exactly the way it is, what kind of guidance would we be given? Or do we even know at this point? Is it too early?
I'm going to let Katie speak to that.
The one who's really not seen anything. Laura's been working with the applicants more. No, I think that, all of I think the points you've made are very relevant. I think that a lot of the information they've provided about the surrounding context also is relevant, that we're looking at a block of buildings that are not going away, that are 1 and 2 stories. So fitting in with that block, providing some transition from the 1-story buildings up to the larger buildings around them. I think we had something recently with a project that varied height kind of from one end of the block to the other, that talked about transitioning.
Up on 10th,
Yeah.
across from Vassar Hall, that project,
yeah.
because they actually had to get a variance. Part of their building was 5 stories, but part of their building was only 2 stories.
So they were trying to kind of relate that building to the lower heights of the surrounding older, midtown structures, and I think that was illustrated really well. So all of those things would be kind of taken into consideration by staff as we look at what's proposed.
I think it can be challenging when since this project's going to contain the existing 1-story structures that are next door. I think it can be challenging if you propose a building that maybe is a lot larger than those buildings. And so from that standpoint, doing one that looks 2 stories, it kind of doesn't overpower the existing 1-story buildings. But on the other hand, we had a new project just a block away from here recently that was 12 stories. So we are getting new projects in this area that are meeting and exceeding that minimum height requirement. And so it's, at this point, I don't know what I personally would recommend. It's obviously a discussion issue that involves staff discussing, applicants discussing, considering anything you guys might recommend at this meeting. So from that standpoint, I think this was a really good opportunity for them to get feedback from you all.
I think it's much easier for us to consider a project that maybe isn't in full compliance if there is a path that is shown to us by staff and by precedent of other buildings that have gone down a similar road. That's easier for us to navigate, obviously, than if we were to be presented with a staff recommends denial, and here's all the reasons why, and we don't recommend, even though it's existing non-compliant, we don't want to put more non-compliant fabric into this because of the intent is to grow the the central business district. I think those are the things that you want to make sure that whenever you present it, that you present it in a way that we can see a path to success, even if it's not black and white within the ordinance or within the regulations.
Sure.
I mean, from staff's perspective, obviously, we don't want to promote the demolition of existing/historic structures that have been there for a very long time just because they don't meet the minimum 3 stories or 50 feet. So we've got to make sure that the development that comes in, that, you know, everything kind of fits and works together because we want those structures to remain. So that would be something else staff would also be taking into consideration.
That's very helpful to hear.
Other comments?
I would like some feedback on the proposed wall. If there are any concerns about having a solid wall, so can you go to the Robinson, the view of looking down the street?
The patio.
So on Robinson, yes, there's windows as you get close to the corner, but having that solid wall basically from the alley going forward, are there any issues? Are there any suggestions?
I think that you've kind of alluded to the fact that what's shown is not
Correct, it's
indicative-
not correct with it. We're gonna do some heavy brick detailing there, which will provide a lot of gaps in that wall because
Okay.
inside that wall, it felt very confined when we did the first rendering. They even complimented that it felt a little prisonish, if you will. So we went away from a CMU, went to a brick, and so we're gonna do a lot more brick detailing to allow that light, the ventilation, and just some visual through those walls, and it will be on all 3 sides of those walls as well.
Okay, that would help with like the openings and.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
And we did talk to them about, the openings are gonna be just a couple inches, because one fireman said, obviously, they don't want anybody to be able to stick a foot in there or
And
climb
climb.
up that wall. So we're gonna have to be respectful on how big or the size of those openings.
Did we do something similar on Classen that had a wall that wasn't, and maybe I'm thinking of urban, even a small percentage of transparency, if it's uniform across the entire
Correct.
surface, will actually, from a distance, have, I mean, it's deceivingly open, even if it's a small percent, but, you know,
Correct.
40% can make a big difference, a huge difference.
And we're looking at that being a double Wythe wall, so it's gonna have some openings that obviously are somewhat, an 8-inch depth or so. It could be bigger, so it could create a nice little shadow feature. I think it's gonna do a lot of benefits for being inside, but also for visually on the outside, because like Laura said, you have these large expansive glasses as you get close to the end, but as you're going away from it, we didn't want that solid wall, so we're gonna try to create some interest, if you will, there.
Yeah, I was just gonna kind of throw out there, maybe some people put windows in their fences for dogs, and you could frame a window in, but.
Although we did have another really good idea. We talked about where the statue, the monument was going. It was actually Anthony's idea. We were gonna put a fireman like going up a pole just to represent a fireman, but literally every one of those firemen was like, yeah, we can't do that. We'll have people climbing up that pole every day. So we had to go away from the fireman's pole.
But 8 feet that's the maximum height of a fence, so that would be allowed.
I know for me, directly across the street, the bank, that's also a 2-story building. For me, the reason that feels appropriate in the space scale-wise is there are windows at the top. There are also large trees and streetscape along the pedestrian realm as well. So that doesn't necessarily come over to your building yet. I know y'all are still working through this, but I want to see more softness. I feel like I'm seeing a lot of wall. Glass helps. I do like all the presented glass that you are showing. It does help open up that corner and give it a little bit more openness, but I guess I'm scared that we're gonna have this sheet of hardscape with nothing soft on it. And if we truly are trying to find that kind of park vibe, especially in the backyard space, I'm looking at the rendering right now, I'm like, man, I wish those trees were on the other side of the wall so it's a shared experience too. But that's kind of what's going through my head right now, because this is also my first time to see this. I also am wondering, something not shown in your renderings are the traffic lights and how that will look with your building.
Correct.
Right there, because it's very close.
Right.
I saw a box as well.
Right, and that is one reason why we did kind of carve out the corner of the building, because we knew those utilities were going to be in the way, so we were going to have to strategically. Again, this is so early on, we haven't really gone that far to look at everything yet.
Yeah.
But yes, that we are very aware of that. So that might manipulate a little bit of that, but we are very aware. You do bring up a good point, though, on the existing portion. That is set back quite several feet off of their property line. So if that's something that is encouraged, because right now there is landscaping in between all of these, under these, there's just obviously not in that. So they do have that landscape opportunity, but again, the firemen say, I mean, look at our landscaping, look how much we take care of it. I mean, it's dirt. So they were like, we don't want any landscaping. Well, from our side, we appreciate that softness. So I see us dressing up this existing part with some vegetation, with some shrubs, something like that to soften definitely this wall up. But I still think there's an opportunity, because we are pretty far off here, that if we do need to gain a niche out or something for some of that, I think we could very easily do that.
We will be having a street tree discussion when it comes in. Obviously, there's reasons sometimes why they can't get trees in. It can be utilities, overhead, or underground, and we try to work around that, but
yeah, I was gonna, I struggle with using 1950s massing to say it's okay to looking forward into the future of what is correct for downtown Oklahoma City as precedent for a one-story addition on a corner location that is not activated by usual pedestrians, right? Like, I would not generally be allowed to use that. It's not a restaurant use, it's Union Hall members. So I struggle with that, knowing that Prosperity Bank building to the south is a two-story building. That feels more appropriate. If this comes back to us as only a one-story building, I think something needs to be given back to the pedestrian experience quite drastically compared to a lot of hardscape. So if that means, using some of the setbacks that have been established by the building next to us, putting street trees against the street, creating a meaningful pedestrian experience, I don't think we can do a one-story building with no street trees. That's, completely what this board is built to stop from happening in Oklahoma City.
Sure.
In this jurisdiction. So I think something's gotta, you either have to go up or you gotta drastically improve the pedestrian experience.
Okay.
Would they be open to a shared outdoor space? Like, could the outdoor space, the patio, be brought to the front? And basically the building pushed back. I see your face.
then they wouldn't meet their setback.
No, okay. I was just curious.
The idea, but the answer is no.
Yes.
There may
Anthony.
be an opportunity. There may be an opportunity to articulate the garden wall to where we carve out some space and put, street trees, I've been in this city a long time, and street trees are still a very controversial subject matter. I think there are places where street trees are appropriate. I think there are absolutely places in the CBD where street trees are not appropriate. But I hear you. Can we soften it up a little bit? Yes. The building, as Chris said, the The 2 existing buildings are set back. There's an opportunity there. I think we could crenulate the garden wall in plan and do some vegetation there. The trees, the street trees that you see in this rendering are actually out of the public right-of-way. They're on private property. And they form some sort of a buffer between all the Church's Street, surface level parking. I mean, to the north of this building is a sea of surface level parking. So I would like you to consider this in context. This is a 50-foot wide city lot. This is not a lot like the Citizen lot, right, where you have some opportunities. There's not a lot of opportunities here. This is a very expensive piece of property. It's 50 feet wide. The development opportunities are somewhat limited. In fact, if they didn't own the adjacent lot, this has a very limited development potential if the owner of the adjacent lots weren't the owner of this lot. Just something else to consider. Thank you.
Any additional comments? Seeing there are none, thank you so very much for the presentation and the opportunity in order to provide feedback. Look forward to seeing how this project progresses.
All right, thank you very much, everyone.
Next, administrative approval report, staff.
We had a few. If you have any questions, you can always let me know. There it is. Okay, thank you. Other than
Any
that-
questions on any of the administrative approvals? There are none. Next, comments from planning staff. Laura?
We have a meeting next month. You will be getting a quorum call from me in the next week or so. And on that, I will turn it over to Katie.
Go, Katie.
You've heard me say this a bunch of times now, and I think we've heard from pretty much everybody. And just a reminder, Commission Committee training on Friday of next week, so hope to see as many of you as possible. That's all.
Thank you, Katie. Committee members, any comments? Seeing as there are none, the next meeting is going to be next Thursday, April 20th, 2023. Look forward to seeing you there. With that, we are adjourned.
Thank you.